Good afternoon, everybody. Saturday, September 18th, 2021. If you don't already know, there is a humanitarian crisis taking place in our southern border in Del Rio, Texas. And what I'm talking about is the 13,000 Haitian migrants that have crossed into Texas and are now being held underneath the international bridge. And this is a humanitarian crisis because there's not enough food, there's not enough water, there's definitely not enough facilities for sanitation purposes. So what's happening is that you have these migrants defecating and urinating in place, which in itself can cause health risks. Now, what I find very interesting is that the Biden administration, right, they're mandating employers and the nation to vaccinate itself, yet we're allowing illegal immigrants to cross our borders without even being tested, without even being vetted to see if they're criminals that we don't want to enter into our country. But the other thing is that they are potential carriers of not only the coronavirus, but other lethal diseases that could, infect the population. So it definitely sheds a light on the contrast of what the Biden administration is saying and doing. So the Biden administration is telling us, get vaccinated, right? Yet illegal immigrants, Congress, the mandate doesn't apply to them. But again, the focus is on what's happening on the border. Now, one thing that the Biden administration had instructed the FAA to do was to create TFRs, which is basically temporary flight restrictions. And I'm very familiar with that because I'm a drone pilot. And whenever I go to film and fly my drone to capture images or just do regular nature filming, if a TFR is in place, that basically designates an area that I cannot fly over or fly into. So the FAA had initiated these TFRs that really kept the news organizations from recording what I will show you on videos that I'm going to put into this podcast, and you can judge for yourself. Now, this is a man-made crisis, and this is according to Senator Ted Cruz, who went down to the border, filmed, and has commented on what's going on. And of course, the senator is not short for words of who he blames for this crisis. And I'm in total agreement. The Biden administration, with their open borders policy, has actually created another national disaster. And I think we should get right to it. And I will comment on specific areas, but a lot of these videos are going to speak for themselves. So here we go, folks.
We're in Del Rio, Texas. It is September 16th. This is underneath one bridge. 10,503 illegal aliens. A mass of humanity that has crossed and is waiting to come into America. The reason they're here is simple. 8 days ago, the Biden administration made a political decision. A political decision to cancel deportation flights to Haiti. They did that on September 8th. 8 days later, these numbers appeared. On September 8th, underneath this bridge, there were between 700 and 1,000 people. But when the word got out that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were no longer deporting people who came from Haiti, suddenly everyone who was here called their friends, called their family, and the numbers surged to 10,503. That's what's here today. It is more than the capacity of the Border Patrol to handle. This is the result of a political decision. This is a result that is indefensible.
Okay, so there you have it. Senator Ted Cruz is not mincing his words. He's making it very clear that the Biden administration's open border policies is the cause for this man-made humanitarian crisis. And do you blame him? Like I said, it's bad enough that we don't have the resources to take care of our homeless in this nation, and we're going to bring in approximately 13,000 more people that are immigrating into this country illegally. The worst part is that if the Biden administration canceled those deportation flights, he did it for a reason. And the reason has been hidden from the public, obviously, because like I said, if the FAA is banning aerial photography of what's happening in Del Rios, Texas, then why is he hiding it? If he's so transparent, if he's so honest, why is he hiding it? Why does it take senators to go down there and fight for our right to know what's happening in our country? Now, Texas Governor Abbott, right, he announced the plan to fight the Biden border crisis by arresting illegals. Basically, he spells out that in addition to the $1 billion that they have invested in securing the border, they are now going to invest an additional $2 billion to build the wall and to thwart illegal immigrants from crossing into Texas. And he makes a very good argument. It's actually a very sound plan when you think about it. But what sucks is that our federal government has been lax on enforcing our current immigration laws. Why? Because there's so many coming in, right? And our Border Patrol, I mean, they have limited resources. So it's easier for the Biden administration to grant a blanket amnesty on folks that we have no idea if they are criminals, smugglers, drug dealers, murderers. We have no idea. So I'm not saying that all the immigrants that come across the border fall into those categories, but this is something that the Trump administration had also made very clear. We don't know who's coming into our country. That is why we have an immigration law that allows us to vet anybody that's coming in, legally or illegally. But of course, if you're coming in illegally, you're breaking the law. And this is something that the Biden administration, that the socialist-leaning Democrats have basically dismissed. And you have to ask yourself why. Is it because these illegal immigrants can be registered as Democrats to help keep them into their seats? I mean, we can't even take care of our homeless in this nation. And we're going to bring more people in here, which can add to the potential list of homelessness in our nation. The insanity has to stop, folks. So I'm going to play the video of Texas Governor Abbott and pay close attention to it, because he too is not mincing words. He too is concerned that the Biden administration is shirking on their duties.
I want to thank the Fort Worth Police Officers Association for hosting us here today. It is the federal government's job to secure our border, but the Biden administration has failed to do its job. So Texas is stepping up and doing what the federal government is supposed to do. I am about to sign a law that adds nearly $2 billion to border security in Texas. That is in addition to the more than $1 billion that was allocated during the regular session. Altogether, Texas is devoting $3 billion to secure our border. These funds are needed
So there you go. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has created a law that will help secure the border. But Texas can't do it alone. This is a task that falls on the lap of the federal government. And of course, the Biden administration, during their campaign trail, had indicated that they were going to be honest and transparent. But you have to ask yourself, have they been transparent? Because this particular situation, like I said, the media has been blocked from accessing not the facility, but the international bridge, from flying drones, from actually getting live footage. So, I mean, things have eased up a little bit because I guess the cat is out of the bag now. But here's a news report which actually goes back to March of this year, in which the Biden administration, the president himself, had a televised meeting with reporters with respect to access to the border back then. So this is something that the Biden administration has known since March with respect to granting the media access to the facilities in the border area. But of course, that hasn't happened. And here's the footage that you need to see.
Border crisis has intensified. More anchors, reporters, and commentators are speaking out against President Biden's stance of not allowing journalists to visit the overcrowded Texas facilities.
Blocking access to the news media is not leveling with the American people, Mr. President.
The Biden administration kept talking about transparency, and we're not getting any transparency here with what is happening at the border.
And NBC's Kristen Welker challenged the president at that first news conference.
Will you commit to allowing journalists to have access to the facilities that are overcrowded moving forward?
I will commit when my plan very shortly is underway to let you have access to not just them, but to other facilities as well.
But, Guy, the president didn't agree to a timetable, neither did Jen Psaki on Fox News Sunday this morning. I can't reach any other conclusion other than the Biden team knows the media are heavily focused on this border crisis and don't want pictures that would fuel especially the television coverage.
Well, it's completely unacceptable. And I think if the exact same thing were happening during the Trump administration with these same restrictions on the press, the explosion of fury within the media would be a lot louder than it is. I'm glad we're hearing something about it. We should hear a lot more. The Biden administration created this crisis. They're sort of denying the crisis while blocking access to the press to document the crisis firsthand. There's an NBC News report that they're not allowing ride-alongs for reporters at the border. They're saying direct all questions to Washington. Don't talk to journalists down there. They're calling it a gag order at the border on top of the lack of access to the facilities. The kids in cages, as the Democrats would call them. It's outrageous.
Okay, we're closing out this podcast. So you've heard my comments. You've seen and heard the videos. Now it's time, for me to kind of sum everything up for you. And the truth is, this administration has been a disaster since President Joe Biden's inauguration as President of the United States. Now, don't get me wrong, I respect the seat of the presidency. I do. But I can't respect the man sitting in it who is a commander in incompetence, who has done nothing more than weaken the strength of this country, financially, militarily, on the global stage. As a superpower, we are a laughingstock amongst our allies. And what has he accomplished? Well, he's accomplished a lot of failures. The closing of the Keystone Pipeline, in which we as a nation enjoyed independence from Saudi oil. And now he's reverted that so that we are again going to be dependent on foreign oil. He's repealed the tax policies that the previous administration under President Donald J. Trump, in which you were seeing additional money in your pockets. But that will go away. And then, of course, he's being very divisive by starting a class warfare in which he says the wealthy is not paying their fair share. Now, why does he use the word wealthy? Because he can't bear to use the word corporations, employers, you know, those companies that provide livelihood for a lot of us, companies that we work for, even the small mom and pop brick and mortar stores. Those are the wealthy. Now, yeah, admittedly, some corporations do get better incentive than other businesses, but that's because we need to keep them in this country, whereas under the Obama administration, they were flocking to better or greener pastures outside of the United States. So that fair share, of course, is going to cause those businesses, again, to immigrate somewhere else. He's not a capitalist, he's a socialist. And our divider-in-chief is trying to make us believe his nonsense. But the reality is, the leftist socialist Democrats, they want to make or expand the government and make it bigger. So we have to pick up the tab. So thank you, Commander in Incompetence. But let's not forget Afghanistan, folks. A piss-poor planned execution of a withdrawal out of Afghanistan, which left U.S. citizens under Taliban control as hostages. Until this day, as of the production of this podcast, we still have hostages in Afghanistan. But you don't hear about it because under the guise of diplomacy, the Biden administration is going to make sure that the Taliban get more financial support, more military equipment, and recognition as a state, when in fact, they're a terrorist organization. Well, thank you, Commander in Cowardice, for stranding U.S. citizens abroad and not do nothing about it. And of course, we're being mandated as a nation to get vaccinated. Yet, the open border policy of the Biden administration allows illegal immigrants to come into the country without getting vaccinated. So they will be unleashed on the population, and God forbid if they have anything other than the coronavirus. And this humanitarian crisis at the border, not the final failure for this administration, but a failure, has been kept hidden from the public eye. That's you and me. So I want to bring this podcast to a close by referring to the book of Daniel. Anybody who's familiar with the book of Daniel knows that he was second in command to King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. And during that reign, he was well respected. But King Belshazzar, who came afterwards, right? He invited about 1,000 lords, which were made up of nobles, lords, the wives, and the concubines, to celebrate in his court. And after drinking some wine, he ordered that the gold and silver vessels in Jerusalem in the temple be brought before him so that the lords, the nobles, the wives, and the concubines can drink from them. And immediately after that happened, a ghost hand wrote on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. King Belshazzar was beside himself, terrified, He had no idea what wrote it or what was written. So this king of the Chaldeans asked his magicians, his soothsayers, to please translate what was there. But none of them could. So his mother had reminded him of Daniel. And Daniel was summoned to the court and asked to translate this, even offered more authority, second to King Belshazzar, a gold chain. And Daniel said, no, you can keep those things, but I'm going to translate this for you. And his translation was this: Mene means that God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel means that you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting or deficient. Perez means that your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and the Persians. That very night, the king of the Chaldeans, King Belshazzar, met his end at the blade of the Medes and the Persians. So I'm not saying that President Joe Biden is going to meet his end at the blade. No. But I'm drawing contrast to this administration meeting its demise, not at the end of the blade, but at the end of your vote. Not even 10 months in, and we've had several disasters under this administration. And I'm always asking you, I'm always pleading with you, my audience, right? Text, email, write a letter, call. Call your local politicians. Call senators, call Congress. Burn up their phone lines. Let them know that you're tired of this tyrannical regime called the Biden administration, that you're fed up. Because, folks, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And like I said, he's not even 10 months into the presidency. And we have more years to look forward to. What is it going to take for you to take up that challenge, like they did in 1776, and say no to tyranny, no to mandates, that we are the people, we the people. So please send a friend request so I can produce more of these podcasts for you. I really appreciate your time, and good night.